Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is going to be all about the world of bees.
Ooh,
And not just the honey-making kind either.
that's right.
I asked you to check out this podcast episode called Buzzing Beneath the Surface, the Unsung Heroes of Pollination.
Fascinating stuff.
And honestly, I think we all know bees are important.
Absolutely.
But I have a feeling after digging into this, we're going to learn just how important they really are.
Yeah, there's so much more to these buzzing creatures than meets the eye.
So let's start with some familiar ground.
Sure.
Honeybees' hives, the whole 9 yards. We know they make honey.
Of course.
But the source material really highlighted their massive impact on our whole food system.
Right.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you actually stop and think about it.
It really is. Honeybees are incredible pollinators for
Yeah.
a huge variety of crops. I mean, imagine walking through a supermarket and all the shelves are empty.
Oh, wow.
No fruits, vegetables, nuts.
No almonds.
That's the reality we could be facing without honeybees and their pollination power.
That's a scary thought. But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Our source material mentioned that there are almost 20,000 species of wild bees globally.
It's incredible, isn't it?
That's insane. We're talking about a whole hidden world of bees we rarely even see.
Absolutely. Just in Europe alone, there are close to 2,000 wild bee species.
Wow.
And often, these wild bees are even more efficient pollinators than honeybees,
Really?
especially for certain plants. You know, they've evolved these specialized relationships with native plants over a long time, making them crucial for maintaining biodiversity.
Okay, so we've got honeybees and thousands of wild bee species.
Right.
But how do they actually do it? How does this whole pollination thing work?
Well,
The podcast mentioned something about static electricity.
oh yeah. It's pretty wild, actually.
Huh.
As bees fly around and they land on flowers, their bodies build up a slight electrostatic charge.
Huh.
Almost like when you rub a balloon on your hair,
Oh,
and just like a magnet, this charge attracts pollen grains, making the transfer process way more efficient.
so bees have like tiny little superpowers.
I guess you could say that.
That's incredible. I never would have guessed that static electricity played such a big role in pollination.
It's one of nature's little tricks.
Does this mean they're like better pollinators than, say, butterflies or the wind?
In many cases, yes. Think about it. Wind pollination is so random, pollen just scatters everywhere, hoping to land on the right spot.
Right.
But with bees, the pollen is directly transferred from flower to flower, thanks to that electrostatic charge. Some studies have even suggested that bees using this method can transfer up to 10 times more pollen than those just relying on wind or gravity.
10 times.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like nature's targeted delivery system.
Yeah,
Makes you realize just how much intricate stuff is happening right under our noses.
exactly. And each type of bee has its own little niche.
Right.
For example, there are solitary bees, which, unlike honeybees,
Uh-huh.
they don't live in hives.
Right.
They're often overlooked, but they're incredibly important, especially in the early spring.
Now that you mention it, the podcast highlighted the importance of early blooming flowers, like colt's foot,
Yeah, coltsfoot is great.
for these solitary bees. What's so special about that flower?
Well, solitary bees emerge from hibernation when food is still scarce.
Yeah.
Coltsfoot provides that early source of nectar and pollen.
So they can eat right away.
Exactly, giving them the energy they need to start their nesting activities and build up strength after a long winter.
So it's like a lifeline for those early risers.
Right.
But is there something special about colt's foot specifically?
It's a bit of both. While any early blooming flower is helpful,
Right.
coltsfoot is particularly valuable because its pollen is incredibly rich in protein
Oh,
and essential amino acids.
so it's like a superfood.
Exactly. It gives them that extra boost they need to kickstart their year.
Wow, that's fascinating. I never realized there was so much strategy involved in bee diets.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Okay, so we've got these solitary bees. They're munching on colt's foot.
Right.
But they also need a place to call home.
Of course.
And that's where bee hotels come in, which I have to admit
Yeah,
sounds pretty luxurious for a bug house.
it does sound fancy. But in reality, bee hotels are simply structures designed to provide nesting sites for solitary bees.
Okay.
Think of bundles of hollow stems, drilled blocks of wood,
Uh,
or even recycled cans with holes drilled in them.
So not quite the five-star hotel I was picturing.
Right.
But the podcast mentioned that these bee hotels can actually boost local biodiversity.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, by offering a variety of nesting cavities,
Uh-huh.
you can attract different solitary bee species who have different nesting preferences.
Oh, I see.
Some prefer hollow stems, others need tiny holes in wood.
Yeah.
By catering to these diverse needs,
Okay.
you're encouraging a wider range of bees to call your garden home.
So it's like creating a little bee neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and having more bee diversity means more effective pollination for all sorts of plants, right?
Exactly. A diverse bee community ensures that a wider variety of plants get pollinated, which strengthens the overall health and resilience of the ecosystem.
Gotcha.
It's a win-win for everyone involved, including us.
Now that makes me wonder how much of our food relies on bees. It's got to be more than just honey.
No, absolutely. About 1/3 of the plants we eat rely on bees for pollination.
Really? A third?
Yeah. Fruits, vegetables, nuts, even chocolate.
Wow.
They all depend on those busy bees buzzing around.
Okay, now that's a truly sobering thought.
Yeah.
It makes you realize just how connected we are to these tiny creatures.
It's remarkable.
But if bees are responsible for so much of our food, doesn't that make them incredibly valuable economically?
You're absolutely right.
I mean, just think about all the produce we buy.
The economic value of bee pollination is estimated to be billions of dollars globally.
Billions.
Yeah. Think about the almond industry alone.
Oh, right. Everyone loves almonds.
Without bees, there wouldn't be enough almonds to meet the global demand, and the price of almond milk would skyrocket.
Wow. I never thought about it that way.
It's true.
So not only are bees crucial for biodiversity and a healthy ecosystem,
Uh-huh.
but they're also essential for our food security and the economy.
Absolutely.
It sounds like we need to be doing everything we can to protect them.
We do.
And the good news is
Yeah.
there are simple steps we can all take to make our gardens and communities more bee-friendly.
That's right.
It doesn't require a huge investment of time or money, just a little awareness and some thoughtful action.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of those simple steps we can take to help our buzzing buddies thrive?
Well,
So we were talking about those simple steps we can all take
right.
to make our spaces more bee-friendly.
Well, it all starts with understanding what bees need to thrive.
Okay,
Food, shelter, and a safe environment.
got it. We've touched on planting native flowers,
Yeah,
but it sounds like it's more than just having a variety of flowers.
exactly. We need to think like a bee.
Okay.
They need a consistent food supply. Throughout the entire growing season, imagine if you only had access to food for a few weeks out of the year.
Oh, yeah.
That wouldn't be very sustainable.
No, not at all. So instead of just planting a bunch of random flowers,
Yeah,
we need to be more strategic about it.
exactly. Choose a mix of flowers that bloom at different times.
Oh, so that they always have something to eat.
Right, from early spring all the way to late fall.
Oh, I see.
This makes sure there's always something for the bees to feast on, no matter when they emerge
Yeah.
or how long their foraging season lasts.
So it's like creating a bee calendar.
Yeah.
Making sure there's always a buffet open for business.
Exactly.
But what about those picky eaters?
Mm-hmm.
The podcast mentioned that some bees have evolved to rely on very specific plants.
Right. That's a great point.
How does that factor into our bee-friendly garden planning?
Well, some bees are specialists,
Specialists.
meaning they've co-evolved with certain plants
I see.
and rely on their specific pollen or nectar.
Like what?
For example, squash bees only collect pollen from squash plants.
Huh.
And blueberry bees are particularly adapted to pollinating blueberries.
Wow. So they only eat one thing.
Pretty much.
So if we want to attract a diverse range of bees, we need to do our research
Yeah.
and plant a variety of flowers,
Right.
including those that cater to these specialist bees.
Absolutely. And don't forget about the importance of diversity in flower shapes and colors, too.
Oh, right. Bees see color differently, don't they?
Exactly. Different bees are attracted to different types of flowers. So the more variety you have, the wider the range of bees you'll attract.
Okay, so food's covered. What about shelter? We've talked about bee hotels,
Right.
but the podcast also mentioned that many bees actually nest in the ground.
Yes. Leaving some areas of bare ground in your garden is key.
Bare ground.
Yeah, many ground nesting bees prefer loose, well-drained soil.
Okay.
So avoid using heavy mulch or compacting the soil in those areas.
So those perfectly manicured lawns aren't exactly bee havens.
Not really. A little wildness can go a long way in supporting bee populations.
I like that. A messier garden is better for the bees.
It can be. Think patches of bare soil leaf piles, even brush piles. These provide valuable nesting sites for those ground-dwelling bees.
So it's about embracing a more natural approach to landscaping, right?
Exactly. It's about creating a habitat, not just a perfectly manicured space.
Gotcha.
And this philosophy can extend beyond our own backyards.
Oh, yeah. Like how?
We can advocate for more bee-friendly practices in our communities,
Okay.
like encouraging parks and schools to plant pollinator gardens or reduce pesticide use.
Yeah, because bees don't just stay within the confines of one backyard, right?
Exactly. They're part of a larger ecosystem.
They are.
And by working together, we can
Mhm.
create corridors of bee-friendly habitats throughout our towns and cities,
Oh, wow.
connecting those isolated pockets of biodiversity.
It's like a network of bee highways. But unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and roses for our buzzing buddies, is it?
Right.
The podcast mentioned some of the challenges they face, like pesticides.
Yeah, pesticides are a big one.
Are there any specific ones that we should be aware of?
Neonicotinoids are a class of pesticides that have been shown to be particularly harmful to bees.
Okay.
They're systemic, meaning they're absorbed by the plant
Right.
and can be present in pollen and nectar, which bees then ingest.
So even if we're not directly spraying bees, these pesticides can still find their way into the food chain
Right,
and harm them.
exactly. And the effects can be devastating,
Really? Like what?
ranging from impaired navigation and foraging ability to weakened immune systems,
Wow.
and even colony collapse disorder.
That's really scary.
Yeah.
Are there safer alternatives?
Absolutely. Integrated pest management, or IPM, is a more holistic approach
Okay.
that focuses on preventing pests rather than just reacting to them.
So what does that look like in practice?
It involves using a combination of methods like crop rotation, natural predators,
Okay.
and targeted pesticide use only as a last resort.
So it's about thinking long-term and creating a more sustainable approach to pest control.
Exactly. And it's not just about pesticides.
Right.
Habitat loss is another major threat to bees.
How so?
As we continue to develop land for housing agriculture and other purposes, we're shrinking the spaces available for bees to forage and nest.
That's a tough one. It feels like a constant battle
It is.
between
Yeah.
human development and preserving natural habitats.
It's a delicate balance for sure.
Yeah.
And it's essential that we find ways to coexist with nature.
So what can we do?
It involves being more mindful of how we use land,
Okay.
supporting sustainable agriculture practices,
Right.
and advocating for the protection of wild spaces.
It all circles back to that idea we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
that we're a part of a larger ecosystem, not separate from it.
Precisely. Our actions have consequences, and we need to take responsibility for the impact we have on the environment.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Protecting bees is ultimately about protecting ourselves.
Like that.
A healthy ecosystem benefits everyone.
That's such a crucial point. It's not just about saving bees for their own sake,
Right.
but recognizing that our own well-being is intrinsically linked to theirs.
Exactly.
We'll be right back to wrap up this deep dive into the fascinating world of bees. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of bees.
You know, we've covered a lot of ground.
We have, from their role in pollination to the challenges they face.
Definitely.
And honestly, I'm feeling a whole new level of respect for these buzzing buddies.
Me too. It's amazing how these tiny creatures can have such a huge impact on our planet.
It really is. It makes you think about how even the smallest creatures play such a big role.
They do.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what are some key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
First and foremost, bees are far more than just honeymakers.
Right. They're essential for biodiversity,
Yes.
healthy ecosystems,
Yeah.
and making sure we have food on our tables.
Absolutely. And that diversity of bees is something to celebrate. We've got those hardworking honeybees, but we also have thousands of fascinating wild bee species, each with their own role to play.
It's like a whole hidden world buzzing around us.
Exactly. And the good news is that we can all play a part in protecting these pollinators.
Yeah, we talked about planting native flowers,
Yes.
providing nesting habitats, reducing pesticide use, and advocating for bee-friendly practices.
Right. It's about recognizing that our gardens and our communities aren't just spaces for us, but they're shared habitats for all kinds of creatures.
It's about shifting our mindset
It is.
from being separate to being connected,
Yeah.
recognizing we're all part of a larger web of life.
Exactly. And even small actions can make a difference.
Like what?
Choosing a different type of flower for your garden.
It's empowering to know that we can make a difference.
Absolutely. And it's not just about rules. It's about being curious about nature.
I like that.
It's about paying attention to the bees in your garden and learning about them,
And realizing there's still so much we don't know.
which is exciting. There's always more to discover.
So, to wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
what's one thing you'd like to leave our listeners with?
How about this? What small steps can you take to support your local bees?
Ooh, I like that. Maybe it's planting some bee-friendly flowers, building a bee hotel,
Yeah.
or talking to your neighbors about creating a pollinator garden.
Or simply taking some time to learn more about these amazing creatures.
Because we're all in this together.
We are. The future of bees and the health of our planet depends on us.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of bees.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new and that you'll take action to protect them.
Yes.
Until next time, keep buzzing about the wonders of nature.